Hi, guys. It's Karalynn, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm glad that you're here. As you know, I have released my third book in May called Trust Your Gut. And I know there's been a lot of requests for the book to be on Audible. So I'm working on that. But in the meantime, I'm going to read each chapter on the podcast so you can listen to each chapter. And eventually it will be on Audible. But if you have any questions, feel free to email me or reach out. All right. So we've already done the introduction. Now we're on to Chapter 1 of Trust Your Gut. And Chapter 1 is why you need a written contract. In the world of construction, a handshake won't hold up a wall. Only a well-written contract can. Carl, a masonry contractor and a client of mine, landed a job on a residential home doing some stone and stucco work. As someone who usually worked as a subcontractor, this was his first time working directly with homeowners, and he couldn't be more excited. This project looked promising, and Carl was thrilled to put his skills to good use in Mr. and Mrs. Solaro's home. After meeting with the homeowners, he created a mock-up of how the finished project would look. The couple approved, and after receiving his first payment, Carl got to work. As Carl made progress, issues cropped up, the kind you'd expect on any construction site. There were holes in the stonework, gaps with missing mortar, and cracks in the stucco. While this was normal for Carl, it was not normal for the Solaros. They viewed his work as incomplete and sloppy. Instead of saying anything, however, they remained silent, and days turned into weeks, and their frustrations grew as none of the imperfections were being fixed. Eventually, Mr. Solaro, they'd had enough, and one day Mr. Solaro fired Carl for his subpar work. Carl, flabbergasted, didn't understand. Didn't they know that this was part of the process and that the very minor things that they weren't happy about would be addressed later toward the end? Carl tried explaining this, but it was too late. The Solaros couldn't see past their frustration. A few weeks later, Carl received more bad news. Mr. and Mrs. Solaro were suing him for everything they had paid him, $30,000 plus further damages. Carl's heart sank. He called me to discuss options. "Did you sign a contract?" I asked him. No, not officially, he said. "I drew a mock-up and we agreed to payment terms after a handshake. That's it." The case went to trial, and Carl faced a jury. People tend to like juries because they're made up of people like us, which is true. But what are the chances of the jury being made up of construction workers? Not very high. And what are the chances, on the other hand, the jury being made up of homeowners? You know the answer. The jury saw the photos of the unfinished stonework and stucco cracks. As homeowners, they put themselves in Mr. and Mrs. Solaro's shoes, not Carl's. And because none of them had a background in construction, the jury also didn't understand that these were typical mid-project issues. The evidence, including not having a signed contract, was damning, and the jury ruled against Carl, ordering him to repay everything he had been paid, plus additional $30,000 for corrections and their attorney's fees. It was a hefty sum that could have been largely avoided if Carl had had a written and signed contract. In this chapter, you'll learn why you need a written contract and how it serves two main purposes: to properly manage expectations and to cover your ass. CYA. Residential Contracts 101. You think having a written contract is obvious, but it's easy to get caught up in conversations and agree to work with a simple handshake and a mock-up like Carl did. When it becomes representing you in court, however, having a signed document to reference is critical. I cannot emphasize this point enough. You must have a written contract for every project. Without one, there's really not much a lawyer can do for you in court. A written contract serves two purposes. The first is to manage expectations throughout the entire process. The second is to CYA. Let's get into both. Managing expectations. The number one reason contractors get into trouble is because they fail to manage expectations. While you're an expert at your given field, you must also learn how to manage your clients. Having a written contract is the best way to manage expectations. Every chapter in this book highlights one section of what you should include in your contract, but they all have one theme in common: managing expectations. But having a well-written contract is only one part of the process. You can have the best contract on paper, but if your client doesn't read it or fully understand it, it won't do you any good. And let's be honest, clients rarely read the entire contract before signing. Knowing this, you need to take time to verbally go over certain sections of the contract with your homeowner so both of you know what to expect during the process. Managing expectations is about educating your client on the world of construction. It allows you to teach them how things will work. No one likes surprises, especially when it comes to their home and their wallets. Taking the extra time to explain how the project is expected to pan out is time well spent. If Carl had a written contract, including an explanation of the punch-out process, for example, and took the time to verbally explain what the process looks like to Mr. and Mrs. Solaro, he could have avoided the frustration and eventually the lawsuit filed against him. The majority of homeowners are not construction professionals, and they therefore have no idea how construction projects work. Most homeowners have a story they tell themselves about how their project is supposed to go. And I don't have to tell you that their story is almost always wildly different from your picture of reality. In fact, many of them have false ideas of how things are built, how much they cost, and how much time they will take. And we can blame home construction shows for that. A home remodel show often shows TV. Home remodel show on TV often portray an inaccurate picture of how the construction world works, infusing many homeowners with unrealistic expectations. Without engaging in setting expectations, the contractor goes into the project with a mindset, and the homeowner thinks the same way he does. And the homeowner goes into with the mindset thinking that the contractor thinks the way he does. This is rarely the case. To top things off, construction is an inherently stressful process. Every project is unpredictable. As much as you try to predict everything, you simply can't. If you talk to a married couple who have embarked on a home remodel project, the majority of them say, we almost ended up in divorce over this project. Just as marriages are imperfect, so are construction sites. It's hard enough to deal with someone you're married to, and as a contractor, you're likely the third wheel. That's why it's essential to be upfront with the homeowner and manage expectations every step of the way, and a written contract is the best way to do that. Why manage expectations? The primary reason for managing expectations is to prevent disputes down the line and avoid legal battles. While a written contract cannot guarantee 100% protection against litigation, most of the cases I've encountered stem from poor management of expectations. This includes issues related to project timelines, visual outcomes, and communication gaps with homeowners. Residential construction differs from commercial work because it involves people's home, a deeply personal space. When someone's home is at stake, emotions run high and conflicts are more likely to escalate. Unlike commercial contracts where clients leave the premises at the end of the day, residential projects occur within a homeowner's sanctuary. The sanctuary represents security and safety, and often their largest life investment. You're working in their living space, and they're present throughout the process. If something goes wrong, it's right in front of them, and their world crumbles. Even when clients are in the wrong, emotions prevail. A seemingly minor mistake can overshadow an otherwise flawless project. As unfortunate as it is, homeowners tend to forget the 90% you got right and focus on the 10% hiccup. You'll go from their favorite person to the worst person in the world. As professionals, we can't control how others behave, but we can manage our own actions. Expectation management lies squarely within our control. And when a homeowner expresses dissatisfaction, do not ignore it. Address complaints promptly and follow up with an email documenting the conversation and the solution. Do not stick your head in the sand thinking it will go away, because it will not. It will only get worse. We'll discuss more around disputes in Chapter 13. Contract language. Contrary to popular belief, your contract does not have to be complicated. Contracts do not have to be full of hard-to-read legalese language. In fact, I encourage you to do the opposite. Write everything in plain English. Use the best language that clearly conveys your process. Make your contract straightforward, and so it's easy to read. So easy to read a 10-year-old could understand it. You can also include whatever you want in your contract. While every state does require some specific language, the rest of your contract is in your control. Be familiar with your contract. Whatever you include, you should understand every sentence and why it's in there. Don't hire a lawyer to create a contract on your behalf and then not read it. Don't add language because your lawyer told you to without understanding the meaning behind it either. When you thoroughly understand your contract, you'll be able to confidently field any questions from your client. This not only showcases your expertise, but also ensures a high-quality experience for homeowners. We'll cover more on contract language and state requirements in Chapter 3. Cover your ass. While this may not be a legal term in court, cover your ass, CYA, means to protect yourself from getting sued. Having a contract doesn't guarantee that you won't get sued, but it 100% helps cover your ass in case that you do. The chapters in this book represent important provisions based on expertise, but in no way is a complete list of provisions you should include in your contract. Each chapter represents a case or several cases I've represented in court and how my team and I created language or implemented strategies to work to protect contractors. Despite this list, an element of CYA lands in you and your experience as a contractor. If you did something that did not work well in one of your prior projects, it is your job to include that provision in your contract language addressing that issue. Whatever hiccup, mistake, or challenge you've encountered needs to go in your contract, worded in a way to avoid what got you into trouble. You should be thinking about these things during every job and updating your contract based on your experience. Your contract is a living, breathing document. Revisit and update often. We'll explore more on additional provisions in Chapter 14. Limiting your liability is another component of CYA. If things go south, what's your maximum exposure? The point of the contract isn't so that no one sues you. The point of the contract is to limit the damages when they do. Simply knowing what your maximum exposure looks like on each project is a good way of covering your ass. Carl could have set a limitation on damages in his contract that could have said he'd never be liable for more than what he's paid. In this case, that would have been limited to the damages of $30,000 to the $30,000 he paid and their attorney's fees. Without his limiting language in the contract, however, the sky's the limit. And lastly, while covering your ass is a way to protect yourself and your time from incurring damages, it also protects you from losing your license. For example, in California, among other states, if you're a licensed contractor and you do not have a contract, you're not entitled to get paid. This is important to note because potentially sneaky people could use this against you. If someone hired you without a contract and you went in and completed the entire project, you're at risk of not getting paid. You would have done all of the work for free and there would be nothing you could do about it. Thankfully, most states that have a licensing requirement require some type of contract. Key takeaways. You need a written contract. The contract should be in plain English. Take the time to walk your customer through your contract. The purpose of your written contract is to manage expectations in CYA. A contract is a promise. If you break your promise, it's a breach of contract. Sleep better at night. I've been in construction litigation for nearly 20 years. I've represented both contractors and homeowners, and most of the litigation could have been prevented if the homeowner's expectations had been properly managed. When you sign a written contract, you can sleep better at night knowing that even if something goes wrong, you're protected as much as possible. If Carl had a signed contract that detailed the punch-out process, I could have shown the jury what both parties had agreed to and that the homeowners didn't give us a chance to get to this critical part of the process. I could have explained that had we been built into the agreement, but that the Mr. and Mrs. Solaro didn't let Carl get a chance to get that far. Of course, a contract can't protect you from everything, especially if you're dealing with a client who's throwing up red flags from the start. But if that's the case, save yourself and don't work for them. Before you sign the contract, be sure to trust your gut, which we'll go over in the next chapter. So, guys, if you want to dive into anything else that's in the book before I have a chance to read the next chapters, please go buy the book on Amazon. Or if you have any questions or want to reach out to us, go to thecromeenslawfirm.com. Thank you.